In March of 1986, Japanese writer Aya Nishitani released a light novel by the name of Digital Devil's Story: Reincarnation of the Goddess, and then its sequel just in time for Halloween that same year. It told the story of a pair of high schoolers, Akemi Nakajima and Yumiko Shirsagi, the reincarnations of the Japanese creator deities Izanagi and Izanami, and how Nakajima set into place the events that would lead to the end of the world. The novel was a mix of urban fantasy, religious mysticism, and horror, telling a story of abuse and violence in the highly stratified Japanese school system, and its effects on those within that system. It's a novella I want to suggest for you to read, but I'll admit, it's not for everyone. Namely, the story features heavy topics. As can be gleaned from earlier, violence in schools is heavily featured. It can be graphic, and it's easy to read Nakajima as a school shooter analog written over a decade before the Columbine Massacre. More than that though, this book features a scene of Yumiko being assaulted by the story's villain. While not necessarily graphic, it can still be extremely disturbing. I won't go into a lot of detail on the violence or the assault in this video, but I just wanted to leave a content warning here before we get into it. If you want to see more Megami Tensei content, including Persona in the future, be sure to subscribe to the channel. And if you like that, I suggest checking out some of my other content as well. While this book has never been translated into English officially, there are both English and French translations of this first novel, which I'll link in the description if you choose to read them as well. First of all, let's get a proper introduction to our hero. Akemi Nakajima was a student at Jusho High School. This school, more than most, was highly stratified between two groups of people. The gifted class, made up of the students deemed the most intelligent, and the regular students. The gifted class was given everything they needed to succeed in education. Resources, preferential treatment from teachers, and the like. This caused a lot of animosity between the two groups. Nakajima was a member of the gifted class, but he was kind of middling within that. He had really good grades in a couple of subjects, namely mathematics and computer programming, but struggled in many others. His dad worked overseas for some big company, and his mom spent long hours at her own corporate job, leaving him often withdrawn and alone. He tended to keep to himself, trying to not shake things up and just get through high school. That lasted until one day when a fellow student, Kyoko Takamizawa, decided she wanted to hit on Nakajima and got rejected. Kyoko did not take well to this. She was not only a member of the same gifted class, but also a popular cheerleader, and was used to getting what she wanted from men. In response to being spurned, she went to Hiroyuki Kondo, a meathead jock with a huge crush on her, and convinced him that it was the other way around, and that Nakajima had made a pass at Kyoko. Enraged at the very idea, Kondo beat Nakajima savagely, while the rest of his class just left the room, unwilling to help him. Even Nakajima's best friend, who was a black belt in judo, would rather stand back and watch the violence unfold rather than help out. And that day, something broke in Akemi Nakajima. Nakajima had long had an interest in demonology and mysticism, and owned numerous books about it, from Jewish Kabbalah to Lovecraftian tomes to ancient Egyptian myth. He'd come to a realization some time ago that a lot of similarities existed between the summoning of demons and esoteric Judeo-Christian beliefs and the inner workings of computers. He theorized that he could use a computer to summon a demon, and had even begun to work on that project, but had been hesitant to actually finish it until now. After his beating, he not only knew what he would summon a demon to do, but he carried within him the vengeful bloodlust to actually see it through. He completed the summoning program and activated it on the school's host computer, where he summoned a powerful demon lord, Loki, the Norse god of mischief. He had for Loki one simple command: kill Kyoko and Kondo. While the program initially seemed to do nothing, a few days later, while the class was in the computer lab, Loki seized the minds of the entire class, forcing them to brutally murder the two students who had harassed Nakajima, as well as the teacher who tried to get in the way. All at once, Nakajima had everything. He had revenge against those who had wronged him, the fear and awe of the student body, and a powerful demon to do his bidding. Swiftly, Akemi Nakajima took power over the school, with everyone, including the teachers, serving him out of fear. The problem with getting power, though, is that he needed to keep it. and really it wasn't his power in the first place, but Loki's. The book goes out of its way to mention that, while Nakajima understood a lot of the theory of demon summoning, he knew nothing about the practicality of it. He left an open-ended contract, where Loki would serve Nakajima at his own whim, with the payment of his choosing. And the payment he wanted was women, whichever ones he wanted. Since Loki was still stuck inside the computer he was summoned within, Nakajima created what was more or less a VR headset to connect those offerings to their new demonic master. I feel gross just saying that. Among these women was Ohara, the school's classical Japanese teacher who fell completely under Loki's spell, becoming his devoted servant. Nakajima would go on to create a smaller, hand-sized computer that he could use to summon lesser demons, and wound up taking on the loyal Cerberus, guardian of the underworld, as his companion and literal guard dog. As time went on, Nakajima would try to extend the limits of his power, amending his existing program to move Loki into other computer networks, including those of large companies and banks. Behind his back, Loki and Ohara also plotted to give Loki the ability to take form in the real world, so he would no longer have to rely on Nakajima and could go forward to conquering the Earth on his own. He also impregnated Ohara with his child. 2 months into Nakajima's reign, a new transfer student entered the school, Yumiko Shirisagi. She was another gifted student who had been quite popular at her old school, but had been forced to move by her family when her father got a new job near Jusho. She noticed immediately that the school felt quiet, soulless. The very building gave her bad feelings. But most of all, she found herself innately drawn to Nakajima, the proverbial king of the castle. Nakajima, for his part, felt a similar pull, and began having flashbacks to a previous life. One where he was the great god Izanagi. Since I know most of my audience is from the West, let me give a quick explanation of the story of Izanami and Izanagi. The two were members of the 7th generation of cosmic beings known as, pardon me for pronunciation on this, Kamiya-Nayo? Something like that. And the creators of the islands of Japan. Alongside the islands, they also gave birth to a number of other gods, including the sun, the moon, and others. Their final child together would be Hino Kagutsuchi, a god of fire. Giving birth to this final god was too much for Izanami's body to handle, and she would perish in the process. Enraged at her death, Izanagi beheaded the newborn fire god and vowed to bring his wife back from the underworld, also known as Yomi. Izanagi went down to Yomi, where he learned that Izanami had already eaten the food of the dead, and much like Persephone, was unable to leave. During this conversation, Izanagi also betrayed a promise he had made to his wife, to not look on her while in Yomi. When he did, he saw to his horror that she was a walking corpse, covered in decay and rot, and he fled. Izanami followed her husband, trying to make him stay, but to no avail, as he was able to return to the surface world intact. The story mirrors that of Nakajima and Yumiko's, and as a foundational piece of Japanese myth, will be featured again throughout the series, but most notably in Persona 4. One more person seemed very interested in Yumiko, Loki. The demon demanded Yumiko to be his next victim, and despite Nakajima's misgivings, he submitted to the demon, the one with the real power in their relationship. The next day, their class took a trip to the computer lab, and Yumiko instantly realized that something was off. But despite her protests, the girl was forced into the lab to face Nakajima. As they were about to force Yumiko onto the offerings couch, Loki decided to play his hand, demonstrating to Nakajima his newfound ability to take form in the material plane on his own, and officially casting aside his puppet. While taking what he wanted from Yumiko, Ohara became jealous that the student was getting all of Loki's attention, and snapped the younger woman's neck, killing her, but only momentarily. After her death and being discarded by Loki, Yumiko awakened with a voice in her head, the voice of Izanami, urging her to protect Nakajima and escape the school together. Yumiko willingly accepted a piece of the goddess's powers, using them to hurt Loki and teleport the two away from danger into the Asuka region of Japan. Asuka was an early capital of Imperial Japan, and it's home to many ancient buildings and ruins. Among those ruins is one very specific building, the burial mound of Izanami herself. Despite saving them from immediate danger, Yumiko didn't escape unscathed. Between harnessing the powers of God in immortal form and being attacked by Loki after her resurrection, Yumiko's body was done and she died. Again. But Nakajima made a promise to Yumiko that he would find a way to bring her back. Hearing the voice of Izanami calling to him, Nakajima and Cerberus brought Yumiko's body to the tomb, where they finally met the soul of Izanami. However, Loki managed to follow the pair to the tomb and took possession of Yumiko's body to threaten both Izanami and Nakajima. Nakajima managed to turn the tide of battle by summoning Hino Kagutsuchi, the god whose birth had killed Izanami, and wielding the flame as a sword, which he used to slay Loki. After the battle, Izanami was able to bring Yumiko back to life, allowing Nakajima to succeed, where Izanagi himself had failed so long ago. With that handled, Izanami promised to teach her Reincarnation how to do magic, to prepare them for the future trials that would surely come. Foreshadowed in the end by the arrival of Set, the Egyptian god of violence. Despite not being a video game, and also taking place in a different universe from most of the series, this book still establishes a lot of what we had come to know as the basis of the Megami Tensei franchise. The book introduces a cosmology vaguely based on Kabbalistic Jewish mysticism, but involving a fantasy kitchen sink of a million other mythologies. The most interesting one brought up in this book, in my opinion, is the multiple references to the works of H.P. Lovecraft. His works are mentioned multiple times throughout the novella, most notably in the form of Craft, an AI named after the author that was based in the fictional setting of Arkham, Massachusetts. Most of the pantheons represented in these books are from real religions, but this introduces the idea of pop culture and urban legends also being true to the world. Craft's creator, MIT professor Charles Feed, will also become an important creator in the sequel. The novella also brings in a lot of tropes we'd see from the franchise going forward, having both a male and female hero of equal importance deciding the fate of the conflict, demons being summoned by a handheld computer held by a sword-wielding male protagonist. The book also introduced the idea of our heroes being reincarnations of ancient deific figures, something else that would be carried over not only to the main games, but also multiple sub-series. Cerberus will also become a recurring demon throughout the series, often serving as an early game nuke, and more than once as a story-important demon. This is where we leave the world of Megami Tensei, for now. The next book in the series is titled Digital Devil Story, Warrior of the Demon City, and also is a fan translation available right now. However, after that, I'm not actually sure what I'll do. The other 7 Digital Devil Story books Nishitani wrote have not had the same treatment yet. Nobody, fan or official, has come forward with any sort of translation of these books. I'm trying to learn Japanese, but I'm not going to pretend I'm anywhere near good enough to do this myself. So I have to ask all of you, if anyone is capable of and willing to translate these books to English, that would be a great boon to the entire Megami Tensei community. With that, I'll let you go. You can expect more Megami Tensei content soon, as well as plenty of other video game lore videos on this channel. I hope to see you all soon.